Have you ever found yourself in the midst of social gathering, surrounded by laughter and conversation, yet feeling profoundly alone? This paradoxical sensation is not a failure of your social aptitude, but rather a symptom of your intelligence colliding with the great farce that most call social life. The uncomfortable truth that Schopenhauer recognized with brutal clarity is that society operates as an elaborate theater where most participants have forgotten they are merely playing roles. The human being, by nature weak and vulnerable, creates an intricate system of mutual deception we call social conformity. Observe how people modify their speech, adjust their opinions, and contort their natural inclinations, not from authentic desire, but from the pathetic need to secure approval from others. This desperate pursuit of acceptance reveals not strength of character, but its profound absence. The majority live as mere reflections of what they believe others wish to see, hollow vessels filled with borrowed thoughts and rehearsed emotions. Intelligence serves not merely as a tool for solving problems, but as a lens that brings this performance into sharp focus. The more perceptive mind sees what others cannot or will not. The insincere compliments, the strategic laughter, the careful self-censorship that constitutes normal interaction. While the average person remains blissfully immersed in the performance, the intelligent observer stands apart, unable to unsee the mechanics behind the spectacle. This is not arrogance but clarity, a clarity that comes at significant cost. Here lies the fundamental conflict that plagues the thinking individual. Human nature contains both the herd instinct and the capacity for independent thought. Yet these forces pull in opposite directions, with increasing strength as intelligence grows. The deeper one thinks, the more one recognizes the emptiness of social conventions. The more one recognizes this emptiness, the further one stands from easy belonging. Thus, intelligence creates a natural isolation that no amount of social skill can fully bridge. What Schopenhauer understood, and what society desperately attempts to obscure, is that this isolation is not merely an unfortunate side effect of intelligence, but its necessary companion. The mind that sees clearly cannot simultaneously immerse itself in illusion. The price of depth is the loss of comfortable superficiality. Yet most people willingly pay the opposite price, sacrificing their authentic thoughts, genuine preferences, and honest expression on the altar of social acceptance. They exhaust themselves maintaining an acceptable persona, while their true self atrophies from neglect. As we examine the false promise of social connection, you will discover why the thinking person inevitably finds conventional social life not merely unsatisfying, but fundamentally absurd. Section 1. The false promise. You perceive what others miss in the dance of social interaction, a choreography of empty gestures masquerading as connection. Intelligence functions as an unwanted X-ray machine, revealing the skeletal truth beneath appealing social flesh. Observe a typical gathering. People exchange words without conveying meaning, ask questions without desiring answers, and perform attention while their minds wander elsewhere. The intelligent mind cannot help but notice these contradictions. You see the strategic nature of seemingly spontaneous comments, the calculated timing of personal revelations, the careful management of impressions that constitutes being normal. This perception isn't cynicism, but clarity. The average person experiences social interaction as a seamless, natural flow, while you perceive its component parts, the mechanical exchange of pleasantries, the reciprocal validation, the tacit agreement to remain at comfortable depths. This discrepancy creates a fundamental alienation. You stand in the room physically present yet cognitively removed, like a scientist observing specimens who mistakenly believe they're engaging with the observer. This alienation isn't something you choose, but an inevitable consequence of seeing what cannot be unseen. They surround themselves with constant social engagement to to escape the discomfort of genuine thought. The psychological burden of maintaining awareness, while participating in social performance, creates a unique form of exhaustion, unknown to those who navigate social waters with unconscious ease. While others leave gatherings energized, you find yourself depleted, not from social anxiety or insufficient skill, but from the cognitive dissonance of simultaneously perceiving and participating in the performance. Your mind processes multiple layers: the content of conversation, the unspoken motivations behind comments, the group dynamics at play, and your own necessary self-regulation. This complex awareness demands tremendous mental resources. Consider how your experience differs from others. They speak without monitoring the effect of each word, laugh without analyzing the social function of their laughter, belong without questioning the nature of belonging itself. For them, social interaction follows a comfortable script. For you, it requires constant translation between what is said and what is meant. This burden explains why intelligent people often prefer solitude, not because they cannot socialize, but because authentic solitude offers the only space where this exhausting translation ceases, where appearance and reality harmonize, where the mind can finally rest from constant analysis. The most painful recognition comes when you understand that what most people call connection bears more resemblance to mutual use than genuine knowing. Beneath the veneer of friendship and romance lies a marketplace where people exchange desirable traits: status, entertainment, validation, security, while the essential self remains untouched and unknown. Your intelligence reveals this transaction, exposing how rarely people seek to know others beyond their utility. Watch how quickly interest fades when someone has nothing immediate to offer, how conversation remains anchored to comfortable superficiality, how vulnerability is punished unless carefully curated. The loneliness this awareness creates exists on a different plane than ordinary social isolation. Even surrounded by people who claim to know and value you, you recognize how little of your actual thinking, your genuine perspective, your deeper self enters the exchange. This isn't merely disappointing, but fundamentally disorienting. While others satisfied with surface engagement move effortlessly through social worlds, you stand perpetually at a distance, seeing all but rarely seen, understanding others, while remaining largely misunderstood. This creates what might be called the paradox of intelligent awareness. The same perception that could theoretically enable deeper connection becomes the very barrier to feeling connected. Section 2. The intellectual solitude. When you withdraw from society's endless chatter, something remarkable happens. Your mind, previously fragmented by constant accommodation to others, begins to reintegrate. This solitude that society portrays as punishment reveals itself as the rarest privilege. Unlike isolation, which is imposed and breeds resentment, chosen solitude represents an act of self-reclamation. The distinction lies in intention. Isolation seeks escape. Solitude seeks clarity. In quietude, thoughts no longer compete with the deafening noise of social expectation. Ideas form connections previously impossible in fragmented attention. Consider how differently your mind operates in lengthy solitude versus brief moments between social engagements. In sustained silence, thinking deepens rather than merely extending. Problems previously insurmountable reveal subtle solutions. Creative connections emerge unbidden. This mental clarity explains why history's most profound thinkers deliberately sought separation from society. Newton developed calculus during 2 years of solitary retreat during the plague. Kant rarely traveled beyond his hometown, maintaining a rigorous schedule that prioritized uninterrupted thought over social engagement. Tesla generated his most revolutionary ideas in isolation, claiming that breakthrough insights came only when his mind was free from external disturbance. These weren't damaged misanthropes, but individuals who recognized that significant mental work demands conditions society cannot provide: extended concentration, freedom from constant reaction, and independence from conventional thinking patterns. They remain trapped in the prison of external validation, never experiencing the liberation that comes from building an internal audience of one. The noise they perpetually seek, likes, comments, compliments, attention, prevents the emergence of their authentic voice. You, separating from this dependence, discover that peace isn't found in accumulating favorable opinions, but in no longer requiring them. This independence develops gradually, beginning with small refusals to compromise truth for acceptance. Each time you express a genuine thought rather than a popular one, each time you pursue an interest regardless of its social value, each time you allow silence rather than filling it with empty words, you strengthen this independence. The transformation isn't immediate but accumulative. Eventually you reach a threshold where external judgment loses its gravitational pull. This isn't arrogance, but alignment. Your worth now determined by consistency with your values, rather than others' assessment of them. The profound power in this shift remains invisible to those who've never experienced it. While they exhaust themselves chasing moving targets of approval, you direct this energy toward meaningful creation and deeper understanding. This reallocation of resources, from impression management to genuine development, explains why so many significant contributions come from those who stand apart from collective preoccupations. Their apparent detachment isn't withdrawal from life, but strategic investment in what matters beyond social currency. The freedom from constant self-monitoring creates space for authenticity, impossible within conventional social constraints. Now that you understand the liberating potential of intellectual solitude, how do you navigate a world that neither understands nor values your independence? Section 3. The paradox. The intelligent mind must learn to distinguish between strategic interaction and empty social obligation. Your time and mental energy represent finite resources, too valuable to squander on meaningless exchange. Approach society as an anthropologist might, observing customs without being consumed by them, participating when purposeful, and withdrawing when nothing of value remains. This selective engagement preserves both your authenticity and your sanity. Consider interaction not as moral duty, but as tactical choice. Some situations merit your full presence, others merely perfunctory acknowledgement, while many deserve nothing but absence. This discrimination isn't rudeness, but necessary self-preservation. Unlike those who feel compelled to attend every gathering, maintain every relationship, and participate in every conversation, you recognize that meaningful life requires careful curation of social engagement. When you do choose to engage, do so with clear purpose, to exchange specific knowledge, to maintain connections that matter, or occasionally to experience the lighter aspects of human communion. This purposeful approach transforms social life from draining obligation to strategic tool. They pursue acceptance through constant compromise, yet you discover the strange paradox. Genuine authenticity eventually attracts precisely what artificial sociability cannot. While initially your refusal to engage in empty ritual may create distance, over time, this same independence becomes magnetic. Those exhausted by perpetual performance recognize in your authenticity something increasingly rare. You become the anomaly who speaks truth rather than convenience, who listens with presence rather than performance, who offers substance rather than mere pleasantry. This authenticity creates not widespread popularity, but something more valuable: selective resonance with those capable of appreciating depth. Unlike superficial connections formed through common interests or circumstances, these relationships develop through mutual recognition of independent thought. They evolve more slowly, but reach greater depths, unfettered by conventional limitations. This selective connection represents not a compromise of your solitude, but its natural complement. Intellectual independence strengthened rather than weakened through careful alliance with compatible minds. Building relationships that respect intellectual depth requires both discernment and patience. You must first overcome the conditioning that treats social quantity as success marker, learning instead to value the quality of exchange. Watch for those rare individuals who listen to understand rather than respond, who question rather than merely affirm, who appreciate rather than merely agree. These potential companions often reveal themselves through subtle signs: the thoughtful pause before speaking, the willingness to change position when presented with compelling evidence, the comfort with meaningful silence. When you encounter such individuals, nurture connection through gradual revelation rather than immediate disclosure. Share first your ideas before your feelings, your observations before your vulnerabilities. This measured approach tests both their intellectual compatibility and emotional reliability before deeper investment. Remember that meaningful connection transcends conventional forms. A single conversation of substance contributes more to your development than years of shallow interaction. This quality-focused approach may yield fewer relationships, but those it produces become sources of genuine enrichment rather than mere social credential. The ultimate freedom comes not from rejecting society entirely, but from consciously defining your own terms of engagement. Create boundaries that protect your mental space, perhaps specific days devoted to social interaction, followed by necessary solitude, or clear time limits on engagements that might otherwise deplete you. Develop verbal tools that gracefully extract you from draining situations without unnecessary confrontation. Practice responses that acknowledge without encouraging unwanted interaction. Most importantly, release yourself from arbitrary social expectations. There exists no universal obligation to attend every gathering, respond to every message, or maintain every relationship. Your responsibility extends only to treating others with basic dignity while honoring your own nature. This selective engagement allows you to maintain necessary social functioning without sacrificing authenticity. As you establish and maintain these boundaries, you'll discover that much social anxiety stems not from interaction itself, but from resisting your natural inclinations. Have you built your life around collecting social approval that ultimately leaves you empty? Or are you brave enough to risk temporary isolation for the permanent freedom of living by your own measure?